Thank you guys very much for joining our session. So we're really grateful that you're here. My name is Susanna McGlamry, and I am one of the high school counselors at the American International School, Chennai, in South India. Woo woo, thank you, Ed, for the fist pump. We would love for you guys to come visit us if you haven't already. Chennai is a beautiful, sleepy city, and occasionally we get people who pass through. This year is an up year for us, but we always love to have university reps come on through. But I'm very excited about this session because we've got students here. And I was just saying to them, you know, we come to these conferences and we talk about them, and we sit in sessions and talk all about them and their futures. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to hear directly from them what some of their perspectives are. So this will be a casual and interactive session. We hope that the students will be answering some questions that I've prepared, but I hope that you guys will feel free to ask questions that you have, and then we also have some questions for you guys as well if we've got time at the end. So I can tell that I think the blue are college folks, so if you could just raise your hand if you're admissions folks, so our students have some sense. Great, thank you guys for being here. And what about school counselors and school folks? Okay, and anybody else in the room that doesn't fall into either of those categories? Okay, awesome. Wonderful. So this session is really intended to just provide some perspective about how communication is working with our high school population. So universities are doing, I think, a pretty fantastic job of communicating with a large group of students around the world using digital technology. You guys are far and away above schools. We still really we're lucky we have that face-to-face contact with our students, but we're also really trying to figure out how we can connect with our students more effectively digitally as well. So I want to just give you some kudos, colleges, on how you've been doing that. I think in a short amount of time, you've really evolved and included your own student bodies in communicating with prospective students, and I think that's fantastic. I know that my students really appreciate how accessible your schools are via the web. Just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then I'll share a little bit about just some of my perspectives on trends that I'm seeing. And then we'll talk with our amazing students, and then we'd love to hear from you. So audience participation is required and really, really welcome. So let's first introduce ourselves. I already said a little bit about me, but let's hear from our student panel.
Good morning, I'm Jayati Gogia. I'm from Pathway School, Gurgaon, and I'm a national swimmer. Also, I really love art. Art is one of my strong subjects out of all, and for some reason, IB memes has already started making sense in the second week of IB.
I'm Rehat. I'm from Heritage School, Gurgaon. I'm currently in 11th grade. That's all.
She has way more to tell you. She's just feeling a little shy.
Hi, I'm Meghna, and I'm from Pathway School, Gurgaon too. I'm in the 11th grade, and we're following the IBDP. And this summer, I touched a jellyfish, and I didn't die. So.
Hi, my name is Samay. I'm from the Heritage School, Gurgaon. I had all my life planned out until a week ago, where I had an existentialist crisis, and well.
And currently we're going through a midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis, yikes. All right. So thanks, you guys. We're really, really happy that you're here and grateful that you're here. So I've given them, their only instructions were to be themselves and to be honest with you guys about these topics. So just a quick thing about media. students are really interacting with media and you guys in a couple of different ways. So I just want to differentiate between digital media and social media, because I think that there are some nuanced differences. Our students are using your websites primarily in the digital, I'd put that in the digital category, for discovery and information gathering, right? So that's really the first place that they go. Mostly our students are using their phones. So we have students that do research on laptops, but I think it's really important to keep in mind that a lot of research is happening on phones, and so you want to make sure that whatever website, web platform you're using is phone friendly and easy for them to access on their phones. There are even students who are submitting applications on their phones, believe it or not. I really encourage my students not to do that, but that is happening. So when your web designers are looking at how can we change platforms to be more accessible to young people, really thinking about what that's going to look like on a smartphone is a critical piece. So they're using websites, they're using college review sites, they're using ranking sites, and then they're also using social media. And these guys will talk in more detail about that, but I talked a bunch with my students before coming here just to kind of get a sense if I was correct based on what I've observed over the past couple of years. There is this idea that nobody's using Facebook anymore. My students say they are still using Facebook, but it's not what they're using first. So Snapchat is the thing. So just give me a quick fly up if you guys have taken the dive into Snapchat. Okay. So Snapchat completely freaked me out at first, because the way that I heard about it as a school counselor was it was this platform where a kid could send a text or a racy picture of themselves and it would disappear, right? I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is danger zone. And so then I started to learn a little bit more about Snapchat, and I've been looking at it with my students, and I don't have a Snapchat account myself, but my students do show me stories that they've made. And I have looked at some Snapchat stories that colleges have made too. So I think that that's a big thing. So if you're not on Snapchat, that might be something worth considering, and these guys will talk more about that as well. Snapchat takeovers are a big thing. Have you guys heard about this at all? Great, yeah, all right, some nods in the crowd. So we actually did one at our school at AISC. We had our head of school did a Snapchat takeover, and so he was Snapchatting his whole day. We've had some students do it, and a couple of different teachers, and so that's an interesting way for a prospective student to get kind of an informal peek at your school and what's happening on your campus. My students talk about using WhatsApp, regional chat groups, or prospective student chat groups. So I have students who are looking at schools in the UK, and those reps might create a group for students in the area who are also looking at the school, and so they can send out messages and chat a little bit in that way. I'm also seeing people doing that with accepted students, and I think that that's been really, really helpful for my kids. My kids use YouTube a lot still. That's still a big deal. They really like to watch videos, and their attention span is about that big. So they like to watch short videos. So, yeah. How short is short? What do you guys think about that? How short is short? How long are you willing to sit? 5 minutes?
Actually, depends on the content.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't catch our eye, we'll just close it.
Yeah.
It's serious, maybe. I mean, if it has a funny content or something that interests us at this point, I think we'll watch it for a little more longer, because we sit for movies.
Yeah.
So
That's right. So that's exactly what my students said. If it doesn't get me right off the bat, I'm done. So if you're thinking about using YouTube videos, really thinking about how you can catch them quickly. This is a generation of kids who can find information so easily and so quickly, and if they're bored, they can quickly move on to something else. So no disrespect, but it's like an instant gratification thing from, that technology gives us. So I think YouTube, one of the things that my students said is they don't love like listening to a current student talk about their experience on YouTube. Like, that's kind of dry to them. I think they're more interested in like quick hits to really get a sense of whether they can see themselves on your campus or not, right? So they're trying to find out. They're trying to find out two things. So just digitally, they're trying to find out like the information gathering piece is, does this school have what I'm looking for? What programs do they have to offer? I'm really interested in architecture. Does this school have an architecture program? If the school has an architecture program, is it one that, I have to have a portfolio for, or can I just apply into it, right? So they're information gathering there through your websites and your informational videos. They want to find out how I apply, like all the logistical information. How much does it cost? The real hard facts. And then they're using the social media platforms to really think about their own identity and how it connects with your school, right? So these are much more personal questions that students are considering when they're interacting with you or your student body via social media. So really thinking about like, can I see myself there? Would I fit in? Like, are the people that go there, are they like me? Like, can I look at this school and see like where I might hang out? I had a student who did a bunch of college tours this summer, and that was his one thing that he focused on while he was there. His mom and dad had tons of questions. I was like, all right, so Jordan, what was your big question? He was like, I just walked around the campuses and kind of tried to picture where I might hang out, like where I might sit when I wasn't in class. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And he really judged some of his experiences just on that. And so students are going in through a lens like that. How might I fit in? What might that look like through social media interaction and these quick hits? They also want to know what they're going to do when they get there, right? So what's happening on your campus? My kids are really curious right now because of the political climate about like who's talking at these campuses, what's happening politically on these campuses. Are these campuses remaining quiet? Are they, is it a hotbed for activism? And depending on the student, that's either a pro or a con, that could be a pro or a con either way. But they're using social media and what you guys are putting out to figure some of that out. So most of all, these are still the big apps that our students are using. The other one that I'm hearing from my kids, and I don't know about you guys, but a lot of my students access Reddit. Okay, I'm like completely ignorant. I'm like, you guys, what is Reddit? And so they've been sharing some Reddit pieces with me. And so that's another avenue that I think a lot of my students are using. I'd say of these, Twitter is probably the least popular amongst my students at the American International School. Like my kids will say like Twitter's for old people. I'm like, oh, okay. But they still use it. But they're much more using Snapchat very much first, and then I'd say Instagram. So that's just from the perspective of the kids at my school. In terms of actual personal contact with university reps, email, good old email, is still a thing. And there's actually a report that I've shared with you guys at the end of this presentation that I think is really worth looking at. A study that somebody did in the US about this very topic. And they talk about how still students, the data shows that students still really value that email contact. I know that for my students, the initial emailing with a college rep is the scariest thing ever. I don't know like what they're picturing you guys to be like. I think, they think that they're going to be judged, and it's going to impact their admission. The line I always give them is, pretend you're emailing me. you wouldn't email me in text language. You would email me politely and somewhat formally, but also as a person, and pretend it's me getting the email on the other side, because the people who work in admissions are counselors. They went into the work that they went into because they care about young people and helping them open doors in their lives and all of that. And they're like, okay, all right, I think I can do it. But so receiving an email back from you that's not a generic university form email, it's a big deal to them. So that still, I think, is a really key way to reach out to students. So if you meet a student at a fair, and they've left their email, not just sending them the thank you for visiting our table at da-da-da-da-da, like, making that personal connection, I think can really, really help draw a student into your school. It helps them feel important and like they might, if we go back to this whole piece, it helps fill that out for them. So let's hear from our students. You guys have the dirt, the inside information that we're looking for. So I'd love to hear from you guys a little bit about what social media platforms you guys are mostly using, and maybe related to college research and college exploration, what's been the most helpful for you so far? Take it away.
It's not exactly a website, but I think most of the social media I am using is Snapchat and Instagram, and maybe for the universities that is, I haven't particularly looked at any website, but I'm looking for architecture and NIT, like design. So I was mostly looking for the ideas, how I could create my portfolio, so maybe for that, a lot of Pinterest.
So even till date, websites is what I go to find out about universities and stuff. But on Instagram, recently universities have started making their own pages, right? And they always put this fancy stuff that catches your eye and makes you want to be there, right? But like you said, websites are still the platform where we go to find out about, the minor details and everything.
So just a note on that, Instagram, I was talking to a student the other day, and how many of your schools use Instagram? Okay, awesome. So one of my students, we were talking about Instagram kind of generally, and she was like, there's this whole thing about the aesthetic, that you can create a certain aesthetic story on Instagram. And so she was showing me her Instagram, and I was like, this is fascinating to me, because this aesthetic that she's showing me is actually not very much like the student that I interact with every day, which is kind of interesting. So we were talking a little bit about that, about online personas, and how that can be, and then talking about that in regards to colleges and how it may be hard to tell if there's like an aesthetic that's being pushed out. And so that, I think that's an interesting thing to think about when you're pushing stuff out on Instagram. Is it coming from you, like a student who's doing it generally? Do you have it's a staff? Okay, both. Yeah, so what is the aesthetic quality that's coming out, and does it tell the true story of your college or university? Yeah. Okay, so you guys, if you have engaged with colleges on social media, whether it's through Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or any of those, what has that experience been like for you?
I would say that usually I've only interacted with universities through Facebook and emails, and usually they give us, their highlights, which courses they're known for, or the things that usually students are attracted to in their universities. Sometimes the emails are very long, so you don't really feel like reading them. You delete it right there and then. So,
great feedback.
Yeah, so it's mostly about the courses, and for someone like me, I really don't like reading long emails. So, but I think if universities could, make it short, to the point and brief, I think it'll be beneficial to both sides.
I think if they were precise about what they're expecting and what are they exactly telling us. I think if they're more precise about what they're telling us and what they exactly want from us. If, for example, when they mention, of course we want the details, but we also want what exactly do they want from us, because sometimes it's just when they're telling us the subject choices and what the grade boundaries are, so it just goes a little long. So if we can have have more.
Okay, so you want it to be concise
Yeah.
and very clear. There are some questions out here. Okay.
So if you're asking for short and sweet, and we put in a link, will you click it and read that?
Again, like she said, we want it to be more short and concise, right? So what happens sometimes is when it's a really long email, we start reading it, right? We do read it, like to a certain length, and then always there's a link. We go to that link too, right? So then there's also an option on the website, like on Chrome, where you can actually find keywords that you're looking for. So we just search that and we find the information that we want. So yes, we do click on the link, but we don't read the full thing.
Once you click on that link, you go back to the email header.
No.
All right. Back here.
I can't hear you. No.
Do you guys use your university apps? So like you can go and download like the University of Michigan app on your phone. Have you ever done that? No. My students don't either. Any other questions related? Yeah?
With Instagram and some of the other visuals that you're seeing, would you like to see pictures of people or buildings or both?
Both, and I think also the thing that you're creating there. I mean, some of the projects or through which we get to know what exactly happens in there.
I think the main point for us is that if we can visualize ourselves in your university, hanging around the campus or, chilling there. But it should be both, in my opinion.
And another thing is that when a student actually contacts a university, there's always great apprehension when you establish first contact, because you're not sure what to say to the representative. And when you receive a reply with a link to a website, it's not really individual attention that you're getting. So when a student really does approach a representative, I think what he or she is looking for is individual attention rather than a link to a website.
So would you, for this next step, because that's the only way we communicate, because I know what my team is doing there. We have a huge team to track every student, any student reaching out on the website. The next step after the email is a personal call. So would you appreciate that to get more feedback and
Yes, definitely.
A personal phone call? Okay.
See, like if a phone call isn't feasible, a live chat would also be helpful. Because I personally, I have used certain platforms where prospective students can talk to universities through live chat. So, and I found that really helpful.
like a Skype or
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I would say my students would prefer, and I don't necessarily think that this is a good thing, but I think that my students would prefer a chat. They don't talk on the phone that often. Like we grew up talking on the phone, but they have grown up texting. And so I think that for them, that's a much more comfortable, less threatening interaction. I know that some colleges have called my students and they freak out. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, right? I think it's like, hey, you have to practice talking to other humans, so like, let's do this. But I think because they're feeling like this is such a high stakes interaction, there's this like extra added layer of tension that comes in for them. So maybe the chat first and then, a Skype or a call. Yeah.
what kind of questions do you find yourselves asking? So if you go to the website and you want to email, is there a common theme or anything particular you're reaching out about?
Every time I'm researching for universities, the first thing I look at is the financial aid system, which I feel that whenever universities send out emails or they're posting something on their Facebook page, they end up lacking in providing that information. So I mean, if you could work on it, I think telling the students about the financial aid system, scholarships or anything like that, it would be really helpful.
And also from the perspective of an international student, what I look for is how easy will it be for me to get into a college that isn't in my country, and how will my country of residence or country of citizenship impact my chances of getting into that particular university.
Yeah, as students are putting together shortlists, I think they're really trying to see, like, can I actually get into this college? And that's obviously, like, you can't publish that on your website. But for some students, even finding like accepted student profiles is really, really challenging. It's challenging for me on a lot of websites to find that information from colleges. And I think that that is really useful information for kids. Do I fit anywhere into this profile? And if I'm like way over here, you know, I need to assess kind of where that's going to be on my short list, if it's going to even stay there. So I think, you know, considering the information that kids really want to know, and making that easy to find on your sites, or even pushing that out via social media, I think would be really, really helpful. Yeah.
How likely are you to add yourself onto our mailing lists? When you're just trying to find information, at what point do you go, yeah, I like you enough to communicate with you?
Like we said earlier, we always go through the college websites, right? Obviously, we don't read everything, but especially the images, you know, the images that we see, that's what catches our eyes the most. So once we see those and once we read a little, we add you on our mailing list, you know, so we like you enough. So we're like, yeah, we can communicate with you.
How likely would you be to read a blog from some person? If you're trying to find yourself there, would that be any help, or is that to get too wordy and too much?
If it's a short blog, we would actually read it. But sometimes what happens is, because we've actually tried reading some of the, you know, some of them sharing their current experiences and stuff like that. But sometimes it's like they're forced to do it, and then they're just putting information because the college is asking them to. So we don't feel that it's very honest or something. So we just don't read it.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I encourage my students, as they're really trying to dig into to finish up their to tighten up their short list, to read student blogs. And the feedback that I've been getting is that some of them just feel kind of canned. And so we've been trying to dig into college websites and more like unofficial stuff online that students are publishing, whether it's through student newspapers, where they might be talking about more controversial topics or something like that, for students to see if that feels more like them. Also, not always easy to find. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask, if you, other than the digital interaction, if you meet with one of us, maybe in your campus, or maybe at a fair like this, how much does that influence you?
Great question.
If we gave you like a brochure or something, do you actually go back home and look at it? Do you like us, or how does that work?
So based on the interaction that we have with you in the fair depends, you know, then only if we like the college, then only we look at the brochure again. Right. So yes, like for me, it matters a lot, like interaction in the fairs, or if we meet you face to face, because I feel, you know, because you'll be representing your university, and then just talking to you gives us a feel of what it's going to be like there. So we had a CIS fair in my school recently, and then there was one of the representatives from the University of New Jersey. So I spoke to him, right? And, you know, he gave me, and he didn't just tell me about the academics and stuff. He told me, you know, that, you know, we have this, we have that. So it really impacted me, and I went back, I looked at the website, I emailed him and everything. So I think the face-to-face interaction matters a lot.
So I guess, what is it that you look from us? Do you want us to give you the full rundown of how to apply, what you can do? Or do you want it to be more like we just answering your questions? What do you prefer?
I think it would be, for me, it would be more of insight to what we will be doing, what are we signing up for if we take an admission, because our options are really wide open. We don't exactly know where we're going. So if we're keeping our options open, we want to know what we're signing up for. What is the level going to be there? Mostly of what we'll be doing there.
Personally, I feel a little bit different. I would like to know whether I would get into the university first before I actually start planning for what I'll be doing there. So, more than like what campus life will be like, I'd like to know what all I need to do during my school years, so that my application or my portfolio is good enough to get me into that particular university.
I think for me, the first thing I always look at is the student life that the university has. So if I'm approaching a university, if they could give me a better insight on what kind of life does the student lead in their university and their campus, I think that would be the first thing I'd like to know.
Great. We've got a question back here, and then David.
It's speaking to your point about acceptance and acceptance rates. I think I get that question a lot from students. One of the first things they'll ask me is, what is your acceptance rate? And I've always felt like that was kind of a double-edged sword, right? Students, they don't want to find out that you're not exclusive, right? So it's interesting that you would say you want to know that you would be accepted to the university before you're even interested, whereas I was always under the impression that I don't want to tell them I'm too easy to get to, right? Can you speak to that?
Could I have a moment to think about that, please?
Yeah, so I'll pipe in while you're thinking about that. So I was just having this conversation with a student whose list to me is unrealistic, right? And that happens a lot. And so how do we help students figure out what schools are really the best fit for them? Is the question that comes up for me, and I think kind of goes back to even what students are trying to figure out, right? So they're grappling with the pressure of having to attend, a highly ranked school and all of that, but also like in their hearts, it's about like what's going to feel good to me when I'm there. I'm going to spend 4 years there. It's got to feel good. And so sitting with student and looking at accepted student profiles, I think is really, really helpful for those students who are struggling with their own reality and what's kind of coming in through here, through parents and whoever. So the student I had the other day, we basically just took a look, we used Naviance, like the super basic info on Naviance to say like, hey, so here are the average SAT scores and the average GPA there, like, is that anywhere close to where you are? And he was like, ooh, burn, miss, burn. And I was like, I said, well, let's just keep it real. Like, if you're madly in love with this school, then sure, take a chance and apply there. But your whole list shouldn't look like this. So I think having that kind of information accessible to them is really helpful. And I know that that's hard because that varies for you guys. And there's so much nuance in how you read and who you choose. And that's for us to help communicate to students. But that sort of overarching picture, I think, can be really helpful. David, and then right here.
Can I answer
Oh yeah, sorry.
So when I said that I would like to have information about admissions, what I meant was not admission rates, more like what you look for in a student. Like, for example, whether you want someone who's a specialist or someone who has a more holistic profile. And based on that, I'll be able to identify whether, like, for example, if your acceptance rate is 10%, so that 10% is only out of the people who applied there. So I would like to know whether I would be one of the people who actually does apply there, whether I fit in with that group or not.
Okay. David?
Speaking to getting more insight on the student experience, have any of you had the opportunity to reach out to current students? Would you find something like that valuable, whether it's Facebook, WhatsApp?
Yeah, so I talk to my seniors who are currently in universities in the US or the UK so that I can get a better insight, what kind of life do they lead there? Is the campus good, or are the courses interesting? What kind of variety of courses does the university offer? So for me especially, the first thing I want to talk to are my seniors, and if the university can provide us some alumni or someone we can talk to, or a current student also from the university, that'll be great.
So ma'am spoke about Snapchat takeovers in the beginning, right? So what I've seen recently is like our seniors who have graduated, they all have these Snapchat stories, right? It's like the unofficial stuff that goes on in college that you don't know about, that's not on the website. So I'm sure you know, but we know too. So when we see that, right? So it always catches our eye, and we're like, oh, so we go there, so we don't only have to study, we can do that too, right? And some of them, they also put Snapchat stories while in class. They might be mocking their professor or something like that. So it's always fun to see all of that as well. And like she said, that we speak to our seniors a lot. So the ones who have already graduated from our schools are the ones that we're in touch with the most. So we speak to them over the phone, yes we do, but we don't really read blog posts again, yeah.
Right there and then here.
I just had a question about how you work with students looking at the accepted student profiles. Are there certain elements of those profiles that are most helpful when you're dealing with students? Is it more that kind of like, there's certain parts of it that are like, that's what's most helpful when you're counseling?
Well, usually the information is so general that I use it in that moment of like reality checking, right? And I encourage students to look at that too. Like, can you see yourself in this as you're researching? So, we do look at the acceptance rate, for example. So I have this student who, he's like hell-bent on going to Stanford. And okay, that's great. And you're a B student, which is fantastic. Like, it's great to be a B student. There's nothing wrong with that. And, Stanford accepted 3% of the students that applied to their school. And so, like, let's look at the accepted student profile, right? So mostly it's like a quick look. I think for international students, it can be really helpful to see where students are getting accepted from. I think that can open some doors for them. So, there's sometimes really general information like we have, 182 international students from 43 countries. That's really helpful at an event like this, but I think for students who are coming from overseas to see where are those students coming from? How many students like me might there be there? As I'm picturing myself there. I have a student who's a Korean student who's going to Leiden this year. And the day before she left, she came in and she said, I think there's only one other Korean at Leiden. And I was like, okay, well, you've been in school with Korean students your whole life, so this is a fantastic opportunity for you to branch out. And she said, do you think it means that I'm gonna drink? I was like, well, as far as I know, my Korean students, when they go back to Korea, they drink. But so she was having this, like, what does this mean for my identity? Like, those questions were coming up. So I really think helping students picture themselves there, even with just little bits of information, can really, really help. So I wanted to ask you guys a quick question. These questions are great, so keep them coming. Just about websites. The comment I get from my kids is, the websites look similar, everyone looks super happy, everyone's having a blast. So what do you guys think could help colleges maybe differentiate themselves through their websites? Like, what stands out to you when you're surfing the web and checking out sites?
I could say for the design universities and the architecture. So I've personally been to NID, which is the National School of Design in India, and I've seen their website. The website's pretty boring in terms of it only has the particular information and few pictures of people. But if you actually go there on a fair, they have so much creative stuff there, like the thing you would want to see, what you'll create if you get into the university. So I think there should be more of, I really feel there should be more of what we will be doing and what we'll be signing up for, because we'll prepare ourselves according to that. If we're looking at universities from grade 11th, then we should know that if we apply to that university, how will we get in, what level will we have to meet to actually get the highest score, or what level of quality do we have to produce there?
Anybody else?
So, like you said, that we always see happy faces. So, when I'm going through a website, obviously the first one is a bunch of students walking with their backpacks and they're all smiling, right? So I'm sure they're happy. But the thing is that, she said, that we really want to see what really goes on there, because sometimes it's like if they're showing us, so like on websites you have sub parts. So if you open the one with the science and technology, so there's someone standing with a beaker. So I don't really understand what you're doing with the beaker, right? So you're just standing there. So the thing is that we want to know what you've done, like something that stands out. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you guys have any questions out there? Yeah?
I what is the role of your parents in the decision-making process? Would you like sometimes the process to talk to your parents?
So when we go through websites on our own, but the minute details we only check when we're sitting with our counselors. Like I wouldn't do it on my own sometimes because it gets too boring, right? But there's a lot of pressure on us from everywhere, especially because we're in India, right? And then we want to go out. So they're like, oh, only these many people are going to get selected. Only these many Indians are going to get selected. So then, yes, there's a lot of pressure from our parents, and then they do play a huge role. But I think that they're adapting to the system too. So they're understanding our needs and our wants. Hopefully they are. So somewhere I feel that I'm in, we're doing IB. So the reason why they put us in an IB school is so we can explore ourselves. So the decision making, I think, depends on us more than them.
Okay. Yeah?
So, what's your bubble of university research? As in, not your process, but when you start off, what's your first go-to? Do you just start off with schools that your friends are at, like seniors, or someone you met, or do you just Google the program you want to do? What do you do?
Great
I
question.
think I would go for just Google, or maybe if I know, for me or for the people who know what they want to do, for looking for the universities that offer that program or that course.
So, like ma'am mentioned at the beginning, that we go through ranking lists, right? So when we Google, we look at the ones that are, at the top for the course that we require. Then, before anything else, we see what SAT score do they want, or how many IB points should I get to get in there.
Like academic?
Yeah.
And I think websites like the US News website and the College Board website are sources that I personally use, and I found them very helpful because they provide statistics that universities don't provide themselves on their websites. And also they provide sort of an objective view on the university because if I was the representative of a university, I wouldn't portray myself realistically because if there's something negative about my university, then nobody ends up coming. But I think an objective view would be helpful.
So just can I
Sure.
follow up to that? Now, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you want to go to a place that, of course, is acceptable to family and peers, but they want to be able to see themselves there. If you get to know that this is a school that you do have high chances of getting through, does that kind of make it feel less challenging for you? Like you like that little bit of a challenge where I don't think I can get there, but if I get there, that would be something awesome. Or the moment you come to know that, yes, I do have a great chance of getting there, you kind of drift away and you don't want to make it so safe.
Well,
Do you get my question?
I think that is true. Yeah. Okay. I'll be honest.
When I research, I have a few universities that I'm aiming at, and their acceptance rate and their admission rates aren't really they're not that great. They take in very few students. So what I've been told by my seniors, is that you should make a list of universities, like a blanket or a safety net, a backup plan basically. So if you don't get there, you could maybe go into there. So it has to be, you have to play safe. That's how I do it. So I don't know about the other students, but
I think
of us
most
do it.
counselors here will be aware of the sort of like the dream, reach, and safety schools. So I think it's helpful to know that yeah, I will get in here if I apply for sure. That sort of gives me a backup, and that also gives me freedom to try for my dream schools, because I know that if I don't get in there, I still have a backup.
Yeah, I think, my rule of thumb with students is you should be in love with every school on your list and be like super pumped to go to any of the schools. And if you're not, you haven't done good research. And that should include a range. And I think, to your second question, I really think it does depend on an individual student and their mindset. And how they tackle lots of things. So I think that's a really individual question. Ed, and then is it Bryant? And then right here.
How do you guys feel about Facebook Live chats or webinars? Is there a preference that students would like to see?
I'd say so. Personally, I'm not on Facebook because
Instagram.
I don't like.
Live story.
Yeah, so we'd say that you should live on Instagram.
Yeah.
So that's something we'd use more than
really
Facebook
very
because we only use it like. We only use Facebook to communicate with, say, like, family living abroad. Otherwise, Instagram is a place where we are every time.
What
And
about
Snapchat.
webinars?
Um,
Would you do webinars?
If we have to.
Yeah.
How about YouTube? YouTube Live is
I personally, if you want maximum viewership, I would say go for YouTube, because Instagram isn't a place where I would be looking for college research. So that's like Instagram is a place where I escape to have fun, and I don't really think searching for or planning to go to colleges.
What if it's a really fun Instagram story?
Sure.
Bryant?
Just a question on, you guys, I'm sure, hear and watch what's going on in America, all across, things like that. Do you use student social media to listen to students and see how they're perceived as an international student, what they're going through, how they perceive things?
So a lot of us, like a lot of students in my class, have dropped the idea of going to the US because of yeah. So we do look at we also have seniors out there in the US that went before Trump was there. So we speak to them and we're like, what is the situation like? And we're all very flustered about it, more because our parents are like, what are you doing? You might not get there. So it's a huge factor today for us in deciding if we want to go to the US or not. But I think, I would still go to the US because, like the economy is, right? So you'd actually be in the US instead of somewhere else. So yeah, I think it plays a huge role though, because we're very scared with the political and everything.
And also, as my fellows said, they want an insight into how life will be at the campus, and I don't think universities can provide that aspect of how an international student will be treated amongst his peers, because you really can't tell. It varies from person to person. Someone of Oriental heritage may be treated differently than someone who is, say, Indian or Middle Eastern. In contrast to how someone who's from the same country is treated. So I think an insight into how comfortable I would be at the college amongst my fellow students is a huge part of where
Yeah,
I'm
that
sitting.
might make for a good Snapchat takeover. There's a question right here.
So coming to the ranking system, like there's a question for the university. So there are a lot of ranking systems which are available online. Considering US university case, US News is considered to be a very credible ranking system. branded universities which are nationally ranked. So is it good to follow, like, for example, Loyola Marymount University has a course-based ranking of 13 for a computer engineering program, whereas the Johns Hopkins University also holds a 13th or a 14th rank for a computer engineering program as per USC. So how good is it to follow that course-based ranking?
Amen. Yeah, I really encourage my students to move away from rankings, and that's been something we've been working really, really hard on at our school. I think that has to come from the school level, in terms of, what is this really all about? Of course, we want our kids to go to great programs, but there are some absolutely fantastic programs out there that are not ranked because they lack one piece of the criteria that the ranking system is using, and so they're completely disqualified from that, and that's just ridiculous, right? And so if I'm going on like my own high horse here about like fit, but it should really be about fit, right? Like if we want our students to be successful, there's lots of different ways to find that success, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at who U.S. News and World Report thinks is the #1 business school. But that's like a culture that takes a culture shift, starting at the school level, because it takes a lot of education for parents, and really shifting mindset around who deems something good. So that's a hard one. That's like a battle where, as school counselors, I think we're always fighting, right? Let's go back there. I think it's Candace.
First of all, thank you so much for being honest. It's really interesting to get get cut through the crapping industry. But, so we all have to maintain a website, and we're all going to have to put a picture of a student with a beaker on it to show you that we have STEM programs. And you said, so what are they doing with that beaker? So what I want to know is, do you want a short caption? Susie is doing research on breast cancer with faculty member Joe Book. Is that what will help you see yourself there? Or Professor so-and-so engages students in cancer research? What is it that we have to show you pictures, and what I'm hearing is that you want pictures because you want to see yourself there, and you want to know what they're doing with the beakers. So how do we communicate that to you?
So
Students in biology 101. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I'm old, so. Please help me understand. I come from the generation that we did read.
So we absolutely don't mind the picture with the beaker, right? So it's that, and the caption. So it's like, something, maybe 1 or 2 odd experiments that are very popular, or maybe your college is known for. Maybe you can put that down in the caption or something like that. Not that Susie is holding a beaker because la la la, but maybe, because Susie developed this or something like that. So like, what was the outcome of it?
Another thing, I think if universities could provide a virtual tour, I think that'd be really great, because it sort of does give you a feel of how it would be when you attend that university or any classes there.
Questions related to this that one of you was saying don't press the links. What if you say learning from the virtual tour? Would you press that?
Maybe you would mention that it's a virtual link for the tour. We will.
So it sounds like one of the most powerful things is getting to speak to students who are already in the U.S. from your schools, who have also done research using Snapchat and Instagram. Sure. Based on what you're hearing from them, did that help them find the university that was the right fit for them, or did they wish you would have read more than you emailed?
I've never come across a case where they've regretted their decision. So they're always like, it's a lot of hard work, obviously. So, but they like where they are. So, and I think they did what we are doing right now, not reading the full email and stuff like that. So I think they're going good.
Marcel?
For those of you that are looking at the U.S., what universities are doing a good job? And what you've researched? Who's got a big Snapchat, who's got a big website, who kind of lured you in?
Examples.
Examples.
Give some examples.
What do you want? Don't worry. You won't tell them they're doing a good job.
It's getting it's getting taped, so.
Dum dum dum.
Yeah, so I don't know whether it's the university's responsibility, but I feel that Cornell seems like a very fun place to go. See, it could just be the students because they have a Quidditch team. So the first thing that comes to your mind is like, well, that's a fun place to go. I won't be bored when I'm not studying and things like that. So I think more than the university is doing things to promote themselves, the students should be promoting the university because they provide a more realistic and a more objective view of insight as to what life is like on campus.
I think NYU is also another good example. They promote their university, they show that their university is located in the greatest city in the world, which is New York, and how their students are really into it. Living in New York is like a big thing for most of us. So maybe doing something like that, showing connections to the city that the university is located in, it's a good thing that universities could pick up.
We've got 4 more minutes. Any last bits of advice that you guys have that you want to share?
I have a question.
Yeah, great.
So, since you said that we shouldn't follow the rankings that are up there on the internet, so how do I know where to go?
I think you'll come to find that in the same breath we'll tell you our ranking before we tell you that rankings don't matter.
No, so then you just don't.
Just as quick to brag about what we do well and are ranked as we are quick to point out that rankings are really silly and there's over 100 different organizations that rank universities. I think your first question should be, what is the criteria of this ranking system? How did a university get to be ranked in the top 50 and whatever they are? And what system does this ranking use to rank their universities? Because sometimes you'll come to find that it's really silly. I mean, it has to do with money, it has to do with whether or not they didn't fill out this form to be eligible for the ranking in the first place. I mean, there's lots of different criteria, and you should really ask that question to your parents too. When they're asking these questions about what.
And there are great universities that don't play in the rankings. I mean, Brown is not ranked. Brown is an exceptional institution, and I think a lot of us. I don't work for Brown, but I think there's a lot of us that wish we didn't have to play the ranking game because it's about fit. Where do you want to live? What size of an institution do you want to go to? What kind of research do you want to do? Do you want postgrad, I mean, it's about what it is that you want. Just like the high schools are no longer ranking you. They're not.
We're not.
I feel like we have to keep the objective clear, that is what they want exactly to do, and just irrespective of ranking, choose an institution because it suits them, rather than getting into the big thing kind of.
We should have a whole session on that. Oh, isn't there one in the next? I think there might be one. Like advertising. So we are out of time. We are out of time. And I know that people have more questions. Thank you guys. These guys are amazing. They are out and about, so if you have lingering questions, please see them. I also want to just bring your attention quickly. I linked this in my presentation, but I came across this. It's actually on the ACT website, and it's just got some data that's super helpful. That might be super helpful for you. I think they'll share the presentations, and the link is in there. Thank you guys all for coming.